Okay, I've been thinking about this determinism issue and quantum mechanics. It's sort of, where my sympathies lie with people that have this urge, and it's really to me about things should be continuous. There's an urge for that. And the first, issue is sort of how arguments work. I mean, we tend to, meet up and we compare our conclusions about things. Okay, we compare conclusions, and conclusions already contradict, right? We can know that they'll contradict. Now, when we first hear the other person's ideas, they may be novel to us, and so it could be just interesting to say, to have them explain themselves, and then finally you see how they think, and then you still say, well, no, I disagree, and you understand more about why you disagree. And then when you try to keep talking about it, though, it's like you already have this contradiction. So what do? I mean, traditionally we talk about principles. We try to, you know, look at the thing through different angles and convince the other person. But I think what we really are doing when this is working as a dialogue is, we back up a little bit. Instead of discussing the conclusions where we contradict, we discuss the reasoning. We discuss where we agree on what the either or of a particular situation is. It's like, we back off of the subject. And, in a way, what we do is we show each other that if we make one decision on a particular principle a certain way, then we have to go to this other conclusion. And when we make that principle a different way, we have to go to this other conclusion. And depending on whether we like the conclusion better than our previous answer to that principle, will determine whether we change what we think or we change our view on that principle. Okay. And that's what I want to do in this discussion, because I kind of think that determinists are sort of stuck. Based on the things that they accept from science and whatnot, and that we have seen that they ought to accept, then they have, a limited number of options. Now, the area I wanted to cover was the difference between discrete and continuous whatever. Discrete means that it's made of little chunks, little pieces. Continuous means you could divide it up forever. There is no discrete little chunk. Okay. And this is kind of part of the problem. This is what makes people think things are acausal. If a particle just jumps from here to here, and it doesn't go in between somehow, that seems like it's acausal. The cause isn't touching the effect. Okay. Now, when you're thinking of multi-dimensions, it really helps if you can reduce yourself to 2 dimensions and then imagine the 3-dimensional case. It's a good way to imagine what it's like to be 3-dimensional and use 4th and 5th dimensions as well. So this is you in a 2-dimensional space. You exist in this 2-dimensional space. Okay. Now, here's a 3-dimensional thing. Okay, it looks like a line, but it's a tube. And it's a, wavy type shape. Right here it's just shown floating above or outside of this 2-dimensional space. But what if it intersects the space? So here it's intersecting the space. Okay, the dark part is the part coming above, and the dashed part, of course, is below the plane. Okay, what if this 3-dimensional object, even if it was a 2-dimensional shape, it's oriented in 3-dimensional space, so it's a 3-dimensional object. And I'm saying it's a tube, and it intersects you in your 2-dimensional world. So what do you see? Well, you see where it has intersected your 2-dimensional space. You're limited to the 2-dimensional space, so I've drawn the little circles there where it intersects your 2-dimensional space. Okay, so all you see is this. You don't see those other dimensions because you're limited to your 2 dimensions. Okay, your senses are anyway. If you have some existence in 3 dimensions, that might be another subject, because you are also made of materials and whatnot. So, anyway, you see these discrete objects where the real object is intersecting your dimension, your 2 dimensions. Now, if you touch one of these, do something to one of these, and another one shows a reaction, that looks like spooky action at a distance, right? That because those things are separated. But really, they're connected in these other dimensions. Okay? So if you put a cage around one and try to do something to that one, and then you see a reaction elsewhere, you would think, well, it's caged, it's very isolated. But in reality, it has these connections that go in dimensions you don't have the ability to cage it from. So if something were popping, in quantum mechanics, you have things popping in and out of existence. Well, they really could be going into this other dimension, into another universe. So the beauty of this is that it keeps a sort of continuity. There's a continuous shape here. It seems discontinuous because it's intersecting us. You can have a continuous whole shape that when you intersect it with fewer dimensions, you see only these parts that are intersecting your dimension. And therefore, things can appear, if they're writhing through these multiple dimensions, they can appear to pop in and out of existence in a single dimension. But to do that, you have to believe there's these multiple dimensions, which basically means, some sort of copy of this dimension. What kind of copy it is, I mean, you may or may not be in it, but an electron is pretty much the same electron when it's in this other dimension. I guess quarks would be a better example. They're the ones that seem to do the weird jumping, in and out. The particles that are like neutrons and electrons and protons, as far as I know, seem to, be the kind that rest in our universe, one universe. But they might see something multidimensional simply intersecting the part of the universe that we can sense. And so they would seem particulate when really they're continuous. Now, this relates to this principle somebody brought up, the principle of parsimony, where you should not pluralize things. Multiple dimensions, doesn't it just make it plural? And the point of that is that, let's say somebody gets locked in a room. You lock somebody in a room because you're a terrible criminal, I guess, and you lock somebody in a room with no escape. You go in there later and they're gone. You could just posit that there was another dimension and they left through this other dimension. But it's probably a better idea to, reassess if there really was no escape from the room. And so you don't just want to, adding extra dimensions is really easy. The string theorists do it, and that's the problem with string theory, because since we don't have access to these other dimensions, you can kind of use them to do anything, because if you can slip in and out of the dimension we see, then you can do anything in the other dimension that we can't see, can't double check, and have it come back into our dimension in just the right spot, sort of reverse engineered. It could just be, gamed to match what we see, when really, it could be that in the other dimension, the shape that made those intersections was shaped like this, right? So we don't really know. So you don't want to jump to multiple dimensions, but see, if you have to compare this either or versus each other type of two ideas now, of do you want to preserve the idea that there's this continuity, right? So you can get rid of this discrete thing that seems acausal to you, jumping from one place to another. Or do you want to limit yourself to the most tangible dimensionality that you can? Okay. I like the multiverse because it does preserve the continuity thing. But also, there's still this issue of we only experience one little slice of that multiverse, and why is that? And that's still the will. So perhaps, so the thing about this picture is that the will still can play a role, because even though all the possibilities exist, and there's these multiple dimensions, we are still just taking one cross-section. And it appears that through our choices, we decide. So we are like navigators in this multiverse. And the multiverse could be there, solid. And, the future, there's destiny, and there's a particular past, and they're all quite concrete and still material. But there's more than one of them, right? So you still have the chance to take the branch, and that is the room for the will. So I also like this. This is why, I don't have to give up will yet, though, of course, we're still trying to explain it.